imagine if McIntyre and Owens and maybe one or two other guys reformed the NWO with like Hulk's blessing? I mean, I don't know if it would fit in the modern era, but you know, that part of me would mark out for it. I don't know if it would last long term or how it would go over, but it would be cool to see them come out wearing the black and white.
It could work if they did it with a new agenda. Kind of like how, if you remember when CM Punk took over the Nexus, it was a different agenda than from the original Nexus. So if they did a New World Order, but they're not trying to take over and they're not trying to like change this from WWE to NWO, but just a new agenda. Just like, you know, guys that tell the truth and, you know, shit like that. Like, you know, we're about honesty and dignity and we tell the truth and honor. How could you stand for guys like Cody Rhodes and Seth Rollins and CM Punk? That kind of shit.
Yes, exactly. I mean, the story's already there. They could say, you know, we're tired of being screwed over by the office. We're tired of the lies and the smiling baby faces who do nothing but lie and cheat. And we're going to expose all of this within the WWE. We're going to expose the corruption. And, yeah, I could see it working like that. Can you imagine a segment where Triple H confronts Hogan and says, "What are you doing?" It's like, you got into these guys' head. This is what's going on. You got into their head. You throw them a black and white T-shirt, and it's 1996 again. What are you thinking, Hulk?
Hunter could say, like, dude, like, we brought you back for this sponsorship, not to come in and poison our locker room. And then he could be like, come on, man. Like, you're doing this too. You know, and they got, like, McIntyre there and Owens, and it's like, you're guilty of this too. What do you mean? We're the ones telling the truth. And Hunter's like, what are you talking about? And then they bring out Corey Graves, and he cuts his promo about how he got thrown out of the desk.
Yeah, Graves comes out and he's like the mouthpiece, right? He's like, we're gonna expose the corruption and the lies within the office here in the WWE. And with the blessing of Hollywood himself, we're going to create an even playing field in this company.
Corey says something like, I'm exhibit A of the lies and the deceit in this company. I was at the top of my game, you know, and I was forced to quit before my career even got started because of a neck injury. And then I became the top play-by-play guy in the company. And then you replace me with a part-time former kicker for the Colts. And then he's like, Kevin Owens has done nothing but tell the truth about Cody. And Drew McIntyre has done nothing but tell the truth about Punk. And you could even get Rollins in there at some point if you wanted to. But they could just use the idea of the NWO, just like Punk did with Nexus. Like, you don't want to do a rehash because that's not going to work. They already did that. But just use the idea of, you know, changing the guard and, you know, we're just going to expose the hypocrisy of this company and, you know, let it grow from there and even, like, bleed it out into NXT. I still think the best idea, I've said this many times, they should spread factions out between brands. You don't have to just have people on one show. Okay, that faction's on SmackDown only. Like, you could have representatives on Raw and NXT. In NXT, the story is already built in. They're like, the hypocrisy of this company. The Rock gets himself on the TKO board, and next thing you know, his daughter's the GM of NXT. You think that was coincidence?
Ah, yes, I love it. I love this idea.
So you started with Drew and KO just saying that they needed to reach out to someone that has history with this kind of thing, and it turns out to be Hollywood. And they were like, he gave us this great idea that, you know, that changed the business before. We're gonna change it again, but this time it's gonna be not about taking over or this other shit. It's gonna be about just exposing the truth and being honorable and all this other nonsense that he'll say. But you started out with them. You bring in Graves is another guy, and then you just you can pluck people from different brands, but keep them on their brands, and then just to give guys stuff to do, especially in NXT, because the guy, like we talked about, the guys. You can include women too, but I'm just saying the guys part in NXT is kind of they don't have too many guys. They're more focused on the women in NXT.
Then after Owens and McIntyre, reveal the formation, the return of the NWO with Hollywood's blessing, then they could, come out and say, we'd like to introduce everybody to a friend of ours. It's like another person that was lied to and disrespected by this company. And then they introduce Graves.
Right. You add the people over time. You don't have to do it like, week after week after week. But you start with KO and Drew having a common complaint. And then this happens to fall in their lap, this Corey Graves situation. And then you run with that, the three of them for a little while. And then they add somebody else. And maybe Natalia, somebody that's, she's tired of taking the back seat to all these younger women. She's been the locker room leader, and she can't even get on TV anymore. Just you pick people that are being underutilized, and you include them in this, and you give them a complaint, and you spin it to fit the storyline. Imagine the black and white promos with Drew and Kevin by themselves.
Could even do a few of those black and white promos before they reveal the NWO, like kind of hinting at it.
They just have to make it clear from the very beginning that it's not a rehash and it's not the same kind of thing. It's just an idea of changing the thought process, not changing like the company. Like, we're not going to become NWO, like, because then they'll be like, oh fuck, they're bringing this shit back again. They just have to make it clear that it's more of a state of consciousness thing.
Yeah, agreed. And it's funny because when in WCW, when the NWO came back at the end of '99, they said it's like, it's different this time around. It's like, we're not here to take over the company, but we're here to capture all the titles. That was their goal, is to capture all the titles.
What if Graves showed up at TNA Genesis at the broadcast booth, and he was like, you know what, motherfuckers? Like, if they do the whole thing that we discussed, he shows up and he's like, if I'm not going to commentate for WWE, I'll commentate here. Consider this my fucking termination at WWE. I'm here now at TNA where I'm appreciated and nobody can stab me in the back here. Like, just have him show up with no explanation, and he just sits at the commentary booth. So he shows up at TNA on his own, and then that impresses like Drew and Kevin, right? So in the future, this is what gets them to recruit him, because he did this. He basically walked out on NXT, and the next time we saw him was on TNA. So with our booking in the future, right, with when Drew and KO form this faction, and they reveal Graves as part of it, they'll draw back to this and say, this is what made us recruit him.
They could even have Graves go on there and mention Drew and Owens, maybe not by name, but maybe he could say something like, there's a couple other guys in that company that are going through the same thing that I went through.
That's awesome. You could even have him show up midway through the show, kind of like Scott Hall showed up on Nitro. Have him do the same thing. But he comes through the crowd, he jumps over the barricade, and he goes to the announce table, and he kicks one of those fuckers out. And he puts the headset on, and then he cuts a promo on WWE. And he's like, he doesn't have to go into super detail, but he could say something like, "You're going to demote me? Well, guess what? Next time you see me, it ain't on your TV, it's on this TV." And then you could always save like the bigger promo with more details for WWE TV. But the TNA appearance is like the seed.
Graves could say something like, it's like, "I'm not appreciated? I'm not respected? Well, I'm going to show up in a place where I am appreciated and I am respected. And as a matter of fact, I was requested to come here tonight."
If you remember his tweet, he said something about, I got removed. Basically, he got removed from his job because he wasn't famous enough. So when he shows up at TNA, he could say, well, I'm not too famous for WWE. I'm not famous enough to be on Raw. Famous enough to be on SmackDown. Well, maybe I'm fucking famous enough to be on TNA at their pay-per-view. And, so he's already referencing something that he already tweeted that he had to delete. And he could say, like, WWE tried to censor me, but, I can't be stopped here. That will feed right into what's been happening with Kevin Owens. Remember, Kevin Owens was saying that he wasn't allowed in the buildings, and he kept getting kicked out, so he had to do promos from his car. So that kind of ties into the Kevin Owens promos that he's been cutting for the last month.
Good shit. But I would have, for the first, Graves appearance, he doesn't even mention WWE, SmackDown, Raw, nothing. He just, maybe he'll mention, I decided to show up, somewhere where I am famous enough to call the show. And he just, he can cut a promo without mentioning them.
True. I like that. He could just, I don't know what their commentating team is over there, but he could do it for a match or two, or he could do it for half a show, or he could do it for the whole show. I was just thinking he shows up midway through the show and calls a match or two, and then he says something like, "See, I can do this in my fucking sleep, and you people let me slip through your fingers." And like you said, he doesn't even have to mention them. But he could say, "I'm not too famous. Well, guess what? I'm right here. So I guess I am famous enough." And like you said, he doesn't have to mention them or nothing. But yeah, he doesn't have to call a whole show, but he could. But I was just thinking just a match or two, but just show up like Scott Hall did, through the crowd, unannounced. Everybody seems surprised, like it's a shoot. That would be fucking sick. Man, why aren't we working with Triple H?